look, I want to get her started again, nice and quick, Paul. I was at a high school reunion, unofficial high school reunion, and I say unofficial because it wasn't planned by the school or anything like that. Somebody, because of COVID, we were supposed to get together just before COVID happened. My high school graduating class decided to get together for a rather informal get together about was 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah, I saw your Facebook photos on that, and yeah, they look really cool. The fact that you're able to get a lot of people out for your unofficial high school reunion.
About 20 of us, yeah.
Yeah, that is really cool, and we have, well, a lot of your friends are my friends as well. So
You would have recognized some of those faces, probably.
yeah, there was a few familiar faces in the photos.
Now, do you know Goodwin?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I may have met him
He's
once.
such a great
yeah.
guy.
But
You need to know Brian, which is part of what I wanted to talk about this is that last time I saw Brian Goodwin, one of my great friends from high school, was 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And the time I saw him before that was about 10 years ago.
Wow.
And I'm thinking this guy, who I consider a really good friend, we've kept in touch a little bit through Messenger and stuff like that. This is a guy I want in my life more than twice every 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You kind of reminded of the fact that, yes, there is people that you see every year, 5, 10, whatever, how many years. And it's like, you know what? I enjoy hanging out with you. Like, why is it every only 10 years? This is, yeah.
And he lives far. I won't give his location off on the air unless he was here, but and wanted me to. I've already given his first and last name, but he's far. He's about 3.5 hours from here, so it's far. I mean, I've flown places to see friends more often than I've met up with him. But the point being that, yeah, we just, for people like that who give us we just get along so well. It's just, to me, we got to be seeing each other more than twice every 10 years. 20 years.
So the organization of this, was it just kind of, I guess a lot of the high school people were on Facebook, and I guess somebody had sort of took the bull by the horn and decided to try to get a get together going on? Is that how it worked?
Yeah. So in 2013, we did a more formal one. It was still not sanctioned by the school. It was us that just decided. In fact, it was Brian that always wanted to have a high school reunion. So around 20 years after we graduated, we decided to put one together, and we sold tickets for it. We reserved a restaurant, like a space. It was a little bit more formally put together. And then I guess about 4 years ago, somebody decided, hey, why don't we just name a spot and put it out there and see how many people show up. And I was in Japan at the time, so I wasn't able to join it the last time. But I think they had maybe 10 people, maybe more. I wasn't there, but it was at least 10 or 12 people that came out. And everybody said, hey, let's just do this again. Let's just say, we don't need to make a big deal out of it. Just name a place, name a time, and then boom, we'll all meet there. So we had planned to do that before COVID in March of 2020. And of course, we know how that turned out. We canceled it. And then here we are 3 years later, almost exactly 3 years later, we decided to revamp it and say, hey guys, we were supposed to do this. How about this place at this time? And that's what we did.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. The fact that you had such a good turnout, and yeah, to see some people that you obviously hadn't seen before. But yeah, I think for a lot of people, it's there's obviously work involved in trying to reach out to people. You probably have more of your high school contacts on Facebook than you realize. But
especially at this generation, right? We're the Facebook generation.
Yeah. Like for me, I don't think there's been any kind of, well, not that I'm aware of, any kind of school reunions or anything like that. Nothing within the last 10 years, that's for sure. So yeah, if there was one, I would definitely be interested in attending. I think it would be a cool experience to see people that, how they've come in life, and just to kind of, it would just be an interesting experience. That's all.
Well, and that's what a typical reunion is, right? And it's usually sanctioned by the school. Yeah. They usually put it on, and it's a big deal, and there's a formal invitation to it. What was unique about this is that we'd already had a couple rounds of that. So it wasn't like, I think there was one guy or two maybe that we had not seen since graduating, versus everybody else had seen each other in some way, shape, or form at least a couple times. Not to mention, some of these people are friends with each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I'm friends with a few of the people that were there on a regular. Like Tyler was there,
Mm-hmm.
Everett was there, Peter was there, of
Mm-hmm.
course. So it wasn't like it was a huge catch up of like, wow, oh my god, like it was like we were catching up on the last 5 to 7 years versus like 50
Yeah, yeah,
years.
that's true.
So it made it a little bit different than if you were to get some letter from your school saying, "Hey, everybody," then that just creates a whole different kind of feeling about it. And one other thing I want to add is that we were the first graduating class of our high school,
Huh, okay.
which there was only 90 of us, I believe, around 90 of us that were in that cohort because
Mm-hmm.
we were all in grade 9 together in a school of hundreds. And then they decided in Pickering, where they hadn't built a school yet, a Catholic high school yet, and this was going to be the first Catholic high school in Pickering, and they just basically said anyone in this area is going to now go to this new high school. So the first class we had was actually grade 10.
Mm.
So in the first year of the school, we only had a grade 10 and a grade 9 class. And then every year we would go up a grade, and we were always the oldest in the school.
Yeah.
And it was always, this 90 or so people. It got a little bigger, I guess, as time went on. But that was a big factor, too, is that we were closer, I think, because of that. We hung out together more because it was such a smaller group. It wasn't like 300 people in your class kind of thing,
Yeah.
or 500.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah, it's St. Mary's, right? Because my wife went to that same high school. Obviously,
Yes.
many years behind you. But
Sorry?
yeah.
What's that? Many? What, obviously?
Yeah. Yeah, well, just because you're advanced age, that's all. Yeah, sorry.
Yes. Wiser.
Yeah, you're wiser. Your gray hairs. That's all. Never mind.
Well, we've done some traveling, and I did want to get a little. Just something that came to mind was the kind of traveling that people do. You could travel with your close family. You and your kids, or kid. You can travel with other family members, like your parents or your siblings and their kids or kid. And I just came back from a trip. We went to Banff, ski trip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we traveled with my brother-in-law, who's been on this podcast. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. Like, the experience of traveling with family or friends when you've got sometimes competing interests so I just wanted to say in general, or ask you, have you traveled with other families on trips, and has the experience been generally positive or a bit of both, or always like what's been your experience with that?
Yeah, good question. Because my wife and I, we've done a lot of traveling. We haven't necessarily traveled with another family, but I have traveled with other people before. And I always think that, who your travel partner is so very important, because who you're with can make or break a vacation.
It really can.
Yeah, for sure. And, your vacation times are precious in the sense that you're spending a lot of money. You're taking time off work, so you want to make sure you enjoy your vacation. Nobody wants a bad holiday, otherwise it puts you in a horrible mood. But yeah, for the most part, my wife and I, we've been very selective as to who we travel with, because, we've had some trips in the past where, maybe, with other couples or whatever, that maybe we didn't gel as much as I thought it was going to be, or maybe not be as the aligning interests. It's hard to kind of describe it, but there's times when we've traveled with people and they get on your nerves. By the time that the vacation is wrapping up, you're kind of glad to be going home, that type of thing.
And what would be an example of that?
Just
what gets on someone's nerves about traveling with someone?
I don't know, maybe just some of their living habits or just some of the stuff that they want to do.
Cleaning up after breakfast or not
Yeah, yeah, or just
leaving their stuff around if you're sharing an accommodation,
yeah,
because sometimes you can travel and you each have your own room,
yeah,
or you could share like a chalet or something.
yeah, yeah. There can be a lot of different factors, and I'm not going to go into too much detail in case maybe those some of those people might be listening. I don't know, probably not, but either way, I won't go into the finer.
Please feel free to go into it.
Yeah, the finer details. But yeah,
Need
just to
some
just say
drama.
that there can be people that have different physical limitations. My wife and I are very much into walking and sightseeing.
Mm.
Other people not so much. They don't want to do that. So you have to really be so careful as to who you select in the right type of trip. If you're going for like a beach holiday, then certain people would be good for that. But if you're going for sightseeing, then you want to have a different people for that.
Yeah, and hard when the place it can offer both of those things,
Yeah,
right? So then it is a decision: are we going sightseeing or are we going beach today?
yeah, yeah. Like a lot of times, my wife and I just sometimes prefer to just be the three of us. My wife, my
You and
son, and I,
your son, your wife. Yeah.
because yeah, we travel well together. We get along well in the sense that we all like the same things. We all sort of like the same adventures and the same places. So a lot of times we just go the three of us because we enjoy our time together. We don't need to bring another family with us because it really complicates things as well in the sense that certain people can only travel at a certain time, or I don't want to do this, or I
Yeah,
don't
it's
want to
hard to
do
line it
that.
up.
It's very difficult to have, um, a very cohesive vacation where everyone's in agreement with everything, and it's obviously it's kind of unrealistic to expect that to happen anyway. But
So why would someone travel with, like, why would anyone pick someone else to travel with? Like in
well,
your experience, why have you traveled with people?
that's a good point. And it hasn't happened very often, but just sometimes it does come up in a conversation. Oh, come on out and let's travel together. And sometimes it's been good, sometimes maybe not so much. But for the most part, we do just travel the three of us. Our most recent trip, I mentioned in the previous episode, we went to the UK for 2 weeks, and my mom joined us. And that was a positive experience. We got along.
And you had told me you didn't expect it to be. You thought there'd be a lot of issues
Yeah.
with your mom.
No. Hey, she's going to be listening to this episode.
I
So
know.
yeah, you're just setting me up for failure there. No, it's
I am kidding.
yeah.
Yes.
Everything went great. We rented like Airbnb, a couple of different locations, and it worked out really well. And it's also because it was the type of trip where we all had similar interests in the sense that we all wanted to see the same thing.
Yeah, that's her place of birth,
Yeah,
right? And she lived there
absolutely.
for a while, and she was a bit of a, it's her country in a
Yeah.
sense.
And
So
she's in great physical condition in the sense that, we walked a lot. 25,000 steps a day, and she kept up,
and
and
you're lucky too, right?
yeah,
Because like your mom is, your mom, and
yeah.
you're so age wise, this is a kind of trip that if she wasn't in good shape, this wouldn't be
No, it
possible.
wouldn't.
And if anything, could be a real pain in
And
the.
it would be very frustrating. Like we have traveled with people who do have physical limitations that would not be able to come anywhere close to, you know, being able to walk. So to bring the wrong person on a trip like this, where it's a sightseeing trip and you want to walk and see places, it would be
Yeah.
very, very, very frustrating to have certain individuals on a trip like that. So yeah, having, knowing that my mom, was in a position to be able to physically keep up with us worked out amazing, and we had a fantastic trip. It was a great trip, and every moment was amazing. But if we had brought a different couple with us, it may not have been. It may have been a lot of
Yeah.
friction or a lot of frustration.
So one of the things that if I was to say, I mean, we didn't plan it this way, but if you were to come up with like the top five things to be aware of or conscious of if you're going to travel with somebody, I don't know what the five are offhand, but I've written one or two down here. And one of them is you've got to be okay with doing separate things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that. So if you are going to go on a beach, let's go. Mexico is a classic example. There's sightseeing to be done there, and there's also the beach, and there's the pool. So some people might want to just do the pool that day, and some people might want to do sightseeing. And I think as couples, you have to say to yourselves, you know what? Let's try to do some stuff together. But if one day you want to do the ruins and and you just have no interest in that, or your friends don't, then you do the ruins that day and they do something else that day. Especially when it comes to things like shopping. Like
Yep.
shopping would be a big one. Oh, if you're going with a couple that loves to shop
Yep.
and that's
Yep.
all they really want to do, that would so being okay with doing separate
Yeah. No,
things.
that's huge.
That's
Yeah,
one.
100% agree.
The other one is I wrote it down here, organized, being organized, where if part of the trip is dependent, which it was for my recent trip, which was a ski trip, you've got to be organized.
Yeah.
And if you have one family that's totally all over the place and the other that's pretty organized, you're going to have a tough time.
Mm-hmm.
If you agree that by 7:30 in the morning, everybody needs to be outside in the circle in front of the building,
Mm-hmm.
ready to go to make the 45-minute drive to Lake Louise or Sunshine or whatever it is, that will be a problem if at 8 p.m. or 8 a.m., sorry, the other couple isn't out there in the circle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or worse yet, you get a hold of them and they say, "Oh man, we're going to need another hour because we haven't even started getting ready yet." And now you've just lost an hour of the morning.
Yeah.
When you wanted to get to the ski hill by a certain time, so that's another thing. You got to be organized and on the ball.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like if there's an activity involved, whether it's sightseeing or like a sporting activity, like you want to maximize your day and not be farting around and wasting your time, because that's going to really piss people off. And yeah, I 100% agree with that.
So we were lucky. My brother-in-law's the family very, very organized, and I would say, and we're not as on the ball with that as he is, but we're pretty good. And he might be listening to this and say, "Oh man, we had to wait all the time for that." I think there was one time where we actually did have to wait for them, but generally it was pretty synced up. So that's absolutely key, because if you run into that, you're going to be like frustrated for the whole trip. So that would be, and the mobility thing I think is another one. If you're traveling with another couple who doesn't like walking, and it's a walking kind of trip, like like London,
you kill them. Yeah,
that's a walking trip. New York City, that's a walking trip.
Yeah, no, we know a couple that like to travel as well, but I would never in a million years ask them to come on a walking trip like what we did. You'd end up killing them at the end of the trip, and it's like
you'd end up killing you too.
Yeah, probably. And
he could keep up with you.
Yeah, and it's just you have to know the people you're traveling with. Simple as that.
Well, it's been a while since we've talked about my Airbnb, so I think we should talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and hey, we mentioned the fact that, well, I've been traveling a lot, being in the UK, and I was actually had a recent trip to Calgary. So I've actually been staying in a lot of Airbnbs. So yeah, it's kind of cool now. Obviously you've talked about your Airbnb on a number of occasions, but having stayed in a number of Airbnbs, I can now sort of appreciate, what makes a good Airbnb host versus one that maybe is not so good. Certain things that as a customer of Airbnb, things that rank highly in my opinion.
Good. I want to hear about this.
Yeah.
This is good stuff. So I'll just give you a very quick. So the last time we talked about this was probably, I don't know, a couple months after I had it going, which would have been end of last year. I got this Airbnb up and running in October of 2022, sorry. And it's been running now, I guess almost 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first few months, we had a property manager who they did a really good job getting the place set up. They designed it, they set it up, put it all together, and got the listing up, which was huge because there's a lot of work involved in that.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to know what goes into setting up an Airbnb in a proper way, that is, versus just, and I shouldn't say proper, if you want to know how to set up where it's dedicated as an Airbnb, I got lots to say about that.
Yeah.
Some people take their homes and make them, partly available as Airbnbs. That's a whole different story. So the thing I wanted to talk about a little bit here was we were having some troubles in the past couple months with communicating with our property manager, understanding of what her plan was. We weren't getting a lot of bookings. Like in January, we had one medium term rental in one of our units. And just to recap, we have a duplex with 2 units in it. One is a 1-bedroom, one's a 2. And we had a medium-term renter renting for 3 months, January, February, March, in one unit, which is common in this business, that you put a longer-term person in the winter, in the slower months, and then that way you've got a little more consistency, because the winter months are slower. And we weren't too happy about the revenue. It was just pitiful. Like January, we only had that one renter, and we had no other renters that month. And I just kept asking a lot of questions like, hey, well, what's the strategy here? Like, what platforms are we listed on? What's going on? And at one point, she got testy with me and said, you know what? If you don't like the way we're doing it, well, you just do it yourself then. And we have had a contract, and the contract stipulated that each of us had to give 2 months notice if we were going to break the relationship. And she said, why don't we just end it? And why don't we just end it like now?
So she basically fired you then?
Well, I'll say she fired herself.
Okay.
It's more palatable
Yeah. All right.
for
All right.
me.
Okay. All right. I'll go with
But
that.
fine. Yeah, she fired me.
Mhm.
That's fine. I'll accept that. Um,
Yeah.
and she did. She literally just said, it was like, this was at the end of February. It was like the 20th or something. She said, or 25th. They said, all right, effective March 1, let's sever this relationship. I said, hold on a second here. We have got a lot of things I've been asking about for a long time that I just still don't have answers to, like what bookings are in our place, what other arrangements have you made, what the cleaners, who are they, the garbage guy, the snow shoveler guy, who are they, where are they, how do we get a hold of them, how can we ensure a consistent turn, like once it turns over,
Yeah.
that's going to happen smoothly. So I was a little bit panicked, right? And to add insult to injury, she said she wasn't going to give us any of that information until the day of the contract ended.
Yeah. Wow. Geez, this lady sounds like a real piece of work. So maybe it's a good thing you did sever ties with her.
I will say this, that in the end, we couldn't be happier with how it all turned out.
Good. Okay.
We have
good.
never been busier. I've had almost the entire month of March was completely booked.
Mhm.
And I will say that all came after having to pick up the pieces from her just basically dumping this back on her shoulders.
Yeah.
We had a great March. We got a fantastic April. It's going to be our highest month of the whole time since we started. And things are happening. Things are going well, smoothly. There have been a couple hiccups here and there, but yeah. So it was just a nightmare dealing with this transition.
So basically, this lady was the problem, though, in the sense that she wasn't working for you. And
No,
yeah,
I think
although
she had lost interest or something had happened. She just took her foot off the pedal, got focused in other areas, and just was not interested in being transparent and communicating with me. So it was definitely very much time for a change.
yeah, well, I'm glad that worked out for you, and I'm sure, yes, it was stressful a couple of weeks there while you sort of sorted things out.
It was.
But now that things are sorted out, and you know that things have looked up and couldn't be better, that this was probably a great learning experience for you as well, knowing that first of all, you can do it, and take you out of your comfort zone and sort of really have to embrace the role of sort of being a property manager yourself.
Yes.
And hey, now that you know this stuff, then it's all part of your overall education that you've experienced over the last year, with the whole property, and now you're learning to be a property manager and realizing that you're actually okay at it.
I'm pretty good at it, actually, to be honest. It's not without its potential hiccups. There have been a couple things that I did that were not good. We have 2 units, and we have a wireless, you can go in with a keypad, and I can assign the numbers to people remotely.
Mm-hmm.
So I can open the door to the place remotely through the system. It's the August lock system. So you can control it via Wi-Fi and everything. And my one issue that happened was I accidentally applied the code to the wrong unit, and I had one guest walk in on another guest, which was a bit of an issue. They were
Yeah.
fortunately very understanding of it. But I had to deal in the middle of a Thursday afternoon. I got a call at 4:15 from a pretty angry tenant saying, "Clark, do you know just what happened? Do you know what happened just now?" And I'm like, "Yes, because I've already talked to the other person who said that they just walked in on you." Is what I'm thinking. I
Yeah.
said, "Yes, I know there was an issue and that someone opened your door," and she's freaking out. I said, "Is there anything I can do? I've sorted. I'm looking into why it happened. Is there anything I can do to help you feel better about this?" And she says, "I'm just so angry. I don't even know what to say."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
meanwhile, I had to step away from a business meeting to deal with this. And like, I'm like, this isn't my day job, but it's important.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
I still have to make a decision whether I want to continue to be the property manager or whether we want to outsource it.
Yeah.
I'm in a TBD at the moment on
Mm.
that. It's because you do have to give up some of your money to hire somebody. It's
Yeah.
going to be 15-20% of your revenue is typically what they'll charge.
Mm-hmm.
So because there's a lot of activity going on. So yeah. But I did want to ask you. Sorry, you want to ask something?
Um, yeah, well, I guess, yeah, you're having to kind of when you deal with these urgent issues, and you hope it doesn't, you don't have a ton of urgent issues, but yeah, it's all about accountability in that, yes, mistakes are going to happen, but yeah, you're as an Airbnb host, you need to be attentive, and if somebody sends you a message, you gotta answer it as soon as possible.
You do. Fortunately, I did, and they in the end said you really handled it well.
Yeah, and
I
that's
didn't try
good.
to make
Yeah.
excuses for it, and in the end, she actually said what that I handled it really well. And what I did is I went back to her after giving her a chance to sort of breathe a bit. Later in the day, I just said, "Hey, is there anything I can do to make up for it?" And she said, "Well, the first thing you can do is remove that ridiculous pet fee you charged me."
Pet fee.
So we don't allow pets.
Okay.
And I talked to someone about this because I had read that you can get more bookings if you do allow pets.
Mm.
And my friend said to me, I said, "Why don't we just allow pets?" And he's been helping me out, by the way, with this, like in the background with some of the pricing stuff and
Yeah.
with some advice. He said, I said, "Well, why don't we allow pets?" He says, "Okay. Are you comfortable with a Rottweiler or a pit bull that's barking and biting people staying at your Airbnb?"
Yeah.
Like, okay, good point. I was picturing more like the little terrier, like a little small little
Yeah.
dog.
Yeah. It's going to be some mean, ugly thing that's, or making a
He said,
horrible
"Are you
mess.
comfortable with them bringing a Komodo dragon into your place, or
Yeah.
6 cats?" Or
Yeah.
so what he recommended was just put a no pet uh, note there, and then let people ask about it if it's okay.
Yeah.
So we have actually allowed a couple pets to stay there because they said, "Hey, we noticed you have a no pet policy. Would you consider letting my Chihuahua, who doesn't scratch, doesn't go on furniture, is quiet," which I don't think Chihuahuas are really known to be quiet, but doesn't shed, and it's clean and whatever. So we have allowed, but we charge a fee for it because sometimes there is fur and all that needs to be cleaned. Makes it a bit different.
Mm.
But yeah, so she said, first thing you can do is remove that ridiculous pet fee you charged me.
Yeah.
I said, "Okay, well, we'll remove the fee."
Yeah.
And then she says, secondly, you can give me a night, tonight's accommodations should be compensated. I said, "Yeah, that's fair." Her final night there as well, right? It was her final day.
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay, we can do that." And then I thought, I'll just put a little bit on top of that. And I said, "And I'm also going to give you $50 credit for the trouble." And she wrote back, she says, "Bravo, Clark. You've handled this beautifully."
Mm.
It's like, okay, thank you.
It sounds a little bit condescending, but
A little
yeah.
bit.
Okay. But all right.
No, she didn't say bravo. I added that. She said nicely done.
Yeah.
Bravo, kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But she just said, "Nicely done, Clark. You've handled this really well." And then the next day, I'm afraid she's going to give me a bad review, right? Because reviews are super important on Airbnb. Like if you don't get a 5, it can really hurt.
Yeah.
And so I said, "Hey, look, I know what happened. Would you kindly just, if you don't feel comfortable, like, could you just give me no review if you're still upset about this?" And you got to kind of finagle that, how to say that without being like, "Are you kidding me? Of course you're going to get a 1 out of 5. You know, for what happened, you're going to get a bad review. Like, you're not stopping me."
Yeah.
So I wrote her and I just said, "Would you mind just not reviewing me if this is something that's affected your experience?" And she says, "No, you did a fantastic job handling it all. I'm going to give you a 5 out of 5.
Good.
Like,
Good.
thank you. So I was patting myself a bit for dealing with that and getting her, turning it around, and doing it in a way that didn't offend her, because I could have pissed her off. Like, what do you mean? So got a good review out of her and handled it pretty well. So, but good exercising of the muscles.
Yeah. I mentioned that, with my recent trips, when we were in the UK, we stayed at 3 separate Airbnbs.
Yes.
And all of them were positive experiences. I will say this, that the photos that you see, posted on the various websites can be a little misleading.
Usually to the fact you're expecting it to be better or as good as the photos, I'm assuming.
Yeah, exactly. The first place we stayed at, which was in London, excellent location, couldn't ask for anything better. But it was smaller than what I thought it was going to be. But it's still a nice enough unit. It was, all the units we stayed at were well cared for. They were cleaned. Cleaning is you want to make sure you're staying at a clean place.
Of course, it's the number one.
Yeah,
well,
pretty much.
I know a little bit about this. Cleanliness is certainly at the top of it's in the top 3.
Yeah.
Good Wi-Fi signal is up there, and comfortable sleeping.
Wi-Fi.
The beds have to be comfortable. Those are the 3 most important things.
Yeah, and you're not gonna. You have to understand, you're not gonna get a perfect place. It's not gonna be a 5-star hotel. There's gonna be some places.
Mine is.
Yeah, there are gonna be some places that are better than others. We stayed at a place in Windsor, which was absolutely Windsor, UK. That was absolutely amazing. That exceeded my expectations, just in terms of the layout and the size of the unit and convenience. I stayed at an Airbnb on my most recent trip to Calgary, and there was some issues on that one, in the sense that there was a few items where I felt that the communication could have been a lot better. So
communication's a big one too.
So I'm not sure how I'm going to rate that one, because overall the unit was great. I can't fault the unit itself, but from the owner, there was.
This was a while ago though.
No, this was Calgary. This was
Calgary.
Yeah, I just came back from. This is earlier this week.
You got 14 days to give them a review.
Yeah. So
have they reviewed you yet? Has it said they've reviewed you?
I haven't checked, but
because that it goes both ways.
Yeah,
right? They review you.
Yeah,
and you don't see their review, and they don't see yours until you've reviewed them.
Oh, okay.
Both have to have that way. It doesn't allow for a tit for tat sort of thing. Like, oh, you gave me a bad review, so I'm going to give you a bad review.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, then I will definitely check into that. But yeah, I'm a bit conflicted in terms of the review, just because.
Want me to help you with it a bit?
Yeah, maybe I'll reach out to you offline and we can discuss.
Well, I can just tell you what I would do, Paul, is give them a 5 overall on the but just write a private note about the issues.
Yeah.
So you could say, you could just give them a good review publicly, but save the communication piece for the private note, because there's a chance there's a part where after you give your review, you can say private note, then give that part of the feedback, and they won't see that until they've already reviewed you, so they won't work against. That's what I would recommend doing. They will really appreciate that.
Yeah, and that's a good point as well, and that you don't want to tarnish someone's reputation, and they'll appreciate you for not doing that, but at the same time they need to be made aware that there's certain things that could have been explained better, and just the communication could have been
they should appreciate that. But it's to pillory them in public, I think, as an Airbnb host, of course, I have this perspective, but I think it's important that that people do, the communication, or the when you have that feedback, just give it privately, unless they were really just complete jerks about it. What was the communication thing that, what was the specifics of that you had an issue with? Was it response time, or was it
So
that they told you the door was here, but you did actually over there, or the lock thing didn't work, or like what was the
yeah, so
communication issue?
the place in Calgary that I stayed at, they just didn't explain how like the key fob system worked, and entry into the underground parking garage, all of that. Like there could have been some more details
Did the
provided.
reviews say anything about that? Did you happen to notice?
I didn't really go into that much detail because they sort of came up as they went along. Um, Either way, yeah, Airbnbs they're good. I would recommend them. It's you get a nicer place than what you would get at a hotel. There's limitations as to the hotel's experience. It can be good in some ways, maybe not so much for others.
Yeah, it's a different experience.
Yeah, and when, especially if you're spending a week or at least 3 or 4 days at a location, you want to make sure you're comfortable.
All right, what are we watching, Paul? What's on your docket? What have you been watching recently?
Well, lots of stuff. There's lots of good shows that are out that I've been catching up on. But I guess the one thing I'll sort of single out for today.
By the way, it can be what we're watching, reading, or listening to.
Okay. Yep. There was a Netflix documentary, the MH370. This was the missing Malaysian Airlines.
Yes, I started watching that. I got about half an hour in, but anyway, continue.
So yeah, it is a 3-part documentary. I think the episodes, 3 episodes, about an hour each episode. And it's just discussing this, I don't know how familiar our listeners might be on this, but back in...
This was the one that went missing, right?
Yeah, back in 2014, there was a Malaysian Airlines flight, and then there was over, I think, about 300 people on board.
Was it in 2014?
Yeah, 2014.
I was thinking it was while I was in Asia, but no, it wasn't. It was before we went, because I went in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So yeah, this flight went missing, and it was quite the. I'm trying to think back, because obviously almost 10 years ago, but I do recall it being quite a bit in the headlines back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just kind of explained about the mystery of the fact that it just felt like this flight literally just disappeared off the face of the earth. And it was quite remarkable in that manner. So the documentary focused on a lot of different items. Like it talked about, obviously the families, the anguish that they went through with not having any answers, not being able to obtain any closure in terms of their missing loved ones. But it did talk a lot about the various, I guess, conspiracy theories, which obviously is going to be quite prevalent when something like this happens. It ranged anywhere from, a hijacking to like Russian interference, cover-ups by Malaysian Airlines themselves. And there was a lot of individuals that sort of took it upon themselves to investigate. There was, certain people that featured prominently within the documentary. There's this one guy, I guess the best way to describe him was sort of like an adventurer. And he took it upon himself to kind of travel to various parts of the world, I think off the coast of Africa, where supposedly some of the wreckage of this flight washed up on shore. So it is assumed that, I'm trying not to give too much away, but either way, it's common knowledge now that the wreckage that they have found is still not conclusive. There still is no true answer as to what happened with this flight. They've never found a black box. So, right. There's lots and lots of various writings and layers and so many different individuals that have sort of immersed themselves into this overarching big mystery that's been going on, to the point that I don't know if we'll ever really find out what happened to this flight. But it is interesting in the sense that It does make you think in terms of, yeah, there is a lot of plausible theories as to what could happen with this flight. And it's hard to believe that a plane that large could just disappear. Makes you realize how large the oceans are.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like when this plane went down, they had an idea as to the general area, but they had, multiple ships out in the ocean where within a square kilometer radius as to where they thought it went down. Multiple countries were involved. I think Australia, Malaysia, French were involved. Like multiple countries sent rescue vessels to try to find out what happened to this airline. And yeah, after all the effort and after all the modern technology that we have, it's still not 100% conclusive. Nobody really knows for sure what happened. So yeah, it's a very it's a compelling documentary. Not something you'd want to watch if you have a flight coming up soon, especially over an ocean. But yeah, it makes you think, and it definitely kept my interest. So for those of you that like sort of mysteries and like to sort of go down the rabbit hole as to various possible conspiracy theories and that type of thing, then I would recommend this documentary.
Well, and the other sort of difficult thing about this too is, yeah, that happened in March of 2014, and then they had not long after, in July 2014, they had that flight that was shot down over the Ukraine.
Yeah, and they mentioned that. That's why there was speculation as to is Russia involved, because you're right. There, I believe it was a Malaysian Airlines flight.
It was, yeah, same type of plane, Boeing 777.
Yeah,
and that one was en route to Kuala Lumpur.
Got shot down over Ukraine. And
that's
Russians,
right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I said earlier I started to watch it, and then I don't know. I was just like, it's very depressing, right? Like all the sad people's families, and I just was like, I'm not into this one right now. I'll probably come back to it. So I do know of it, and I started watching it, but it was just a bit too much for me at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's depressing. Like yes, you definitely feel for the people involved, but yeah, it's interesting. Like it's worth sticking. It's worth sticking around.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, and that's on Netflix, right? That series.
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, I just finished up the latest season of The Crown.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And we'll say that, as I have with the other episodes, I enjoyed, or the other seasons, I did enjoy. Mm-hmm. I did enjoy it. I particularly liked, and I think she was in the previous season as well. I thought the casting of Diana couldn't have been better. I mean, it was amazing. Yeah. That character in particular. I wasn't wild about Charles. I thought that was miscast, in my opinion. That's not Charles. He was not like that. The Charles we see is awkward. He's got big ears. He's not dapper and distinguished like the actor that played that part. So I didn't like that. I think the Queen is fantastic. The woman who does that part, really, really good. I enjoyed that episode about the Russian family.
Yeah.
What are they called? Not the Habsburgs, but the.
Geez, I should know this.
What's his name?
The Tsar Nicholas from.
Yes. Yeah. The Tsar Nicholas and his family. I thought that was a really good episode. I like seeing certain characters like Tony Blair, who I also thought was not well cast, in my opinion. But the guy that played...
House of Romanov.
Romanovs, that's it. Yeah, the Romanovs. There's a good documentary on them, by the way. I think it was in it. Or it's kind of a what do they call it? Drama, where it's partly real, but also a documentary. Mm-hmm. Really good. I think Netflix had a series, The Romanovs or something. Yeah. Very good. I thought the guy that played John Major, excellent casting for him. The sons, who knows? We don't really know the sons that well at that age. You don't just hear them at that age that much. I'll give them a serviceable casting on that. They acted well, like the characters. But yeah, I finished that. I guess the one thing that sort of sticks out to me when I do watch this is that I have to remind myself now and then that this is all made up, these conversations. Like they have not gone to the Queen and said, so what happened when you met with with Prince Edward about this? Like, did you really have that conversation in the study about how he wants to have more friends, or like we all know that they didn't do that. They got this information from butlers and attendants and drivers and things. So there is this part of me. It's like, I'm really into this. And I'm like, we don't even really know if this was half true, what they're talking about.
Yeah. So
but it's not bad enough to distract me from it. I do enjoy it a lot. And I'm willing to just go with let's assume this is roughly what was said or what happened.
Yeah. Like I too have seen season 5 of The Crown, and I'm a big aficionado of it. My wife and I, and obviously my mother. And we've talked a lot about the Crown. From what I understand, I think the historical accuracy is much better, has been quite good in terms of the first 1 to 4 seasons.
Right.
I think this particular season 5, I get the impression they did take some liberties with respect to historical accuracy in the sense to your comment. Yeah, we don't know what the private conversations have been.
Right.
In my personal feeling, I think they did spend a little bit too much time on the whole Charles and Diana saga. It's been done way too much.
I didn't know about the phone tapping stuff.
Yeah, I knew a little bit about that. Like there are some aspects
like how that leaked out and was heard and publicized. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, but the episode where Charles and Diana have that sit down conversation in her kitchen and whatever, like you don't know what went on in that conversation. That's just pure fiction. And I think they maybe lost track a little bit in terms of the direction in which they wanted to take it. I think there's a lot more interesting things that they could have talked about with the royal family than dwelling way too long on Charles and Diana.
I agree, and I don't know if they did that just because they think that's what the audience wanted to hear. Maybe I don't know, but overall, it wasn't my favorite season, but I did enjoy it. And I think, is the next season the last season?
I think so. Yeah, from what I understand, I think it's going to be the last season.
And that season, I think, got disrupted a bit by the Queen's death, if I'm not mistaken. I think they paused filming for a little while the fallout from that finished. I think they did say, out of respect for the Queen, we will not be filming. We'll pause our filming. So I don't know if that's going to mean it's going to get delayed or not. But overall, I've been very happy with the series. I think all the Queens have been excellent. Starting with Claire Foy to forget the name of the second person, but they've done well with the casting of the Queen, I think.
I think Olivia Colman was the second one. Yeah.
So I knew her from Hot Fuzz. She's one of the police officers in Hot Fuzz.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen that.
Yeah, I agree with your comments about the casting. The woman who played the Queen this time around, she was okay. I preferred the other 2 actresses prior to that. But you're...
Is that because of how she looks or how she acts or both?
I don't know. I thought she... Maybe a little bit of both. I know. I don't think that the casting quite matched her up correctly, but...
And she was a good actor.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, what they have to decide is, are we going for look? Are we going for acting ability? Are we going for sounds like them? So they got to make compromises, I guess, somewhere.
Yeah. And that's always going to be an expected, contention of debate is to, did they cast properly?
And who's available, right? Maybe the real person they wanted for some of these parts wasn't available. Yeah. Like on one season, they got Charles really well. Like when he was younger, that guy was amazing. He was awkward in every way we think he is. Yeah. The way he would push his chin down into his shoulder when he was talking, and the mannerisms and the goofiness that you remember of Charles from then. But I just, like I said, I thought he got way too distinguished in that last episode. He was a dapper, distinguished guy, and that's not how I view Charles. Even though he got older and a lot wiser, he's still that kind of, I don't know, it just didn't, I didn't buy it.
It makes it less convincing, I guess. It just goes to show that casting is so very important, especially.
But could you suspend disbelief? Because that's the idea of acting.
Well,
right?
Exactly.
I
yes.
could.
Yeah, for sure.
Didn't pull it away too much.
Yeah. But anytime you're dealing with contemporary figures, people that are still around, it's makes it a little bit more difficult to try to cast people. And we've seen this with many other episodes or many other TV series where sometimes they hit the nail on the head. Other times they really struggle to have cast members that are plausible and believable to the point where you would think that you're watching the real person. So for those that are able to do that's really tremendous.
So I bought a phone, by the way. I want to ask your opinion quickly on this. I bought a phone, and I get 3 months of Apple TV.
Yeah.
And when I thought about that, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to go through the trouble of, because I'll forget about it and I'll get charged extra. I'll be paying for it. Let's put it that way. But I do know that the one show I've been very curious about is Ted Lasso. It would be the what major reason, and maybe that Succession show I think's on there as well.
So
have you watched either? You watched Succession, but Ted Lasso, have you watched that series?
yeah, we've watched both. Succession you can get on Crave. I don't know if you have that.
I don't have Crave.
Oh, okay. But yeah, Ted Lasso, oh my God, such an amazing show. Like if you have the 3 months of the Apple subscription, like run to your TV and watch that show now. Like it is so good. I highly recommend it. So
it's worth signing up and maybe forgetting that you signed up and paying an extra month.
Yeah,
to see Ted Lasso.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, it's a great show. Awesome.
All right, Paul. Let's get on with our Easter weekends here.
Yeah, happy Easter to you.
Look forward to the next episode.
Absolutely. Take care.